Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is Asmara Mitchell here. Like, subscribe, comment, and share for more. And please turn on notifications. Um, so far, I've been telling stories about my past, sharing some of my deepest memories, and really trying to connect with a brand new audience of people, as I have spent quite a few years just being like, oh my God, I have no friends. So hopefully now my story's out there a bit more. I will find a few more people who are like me, who want to share their story, who are looking for a platform where they can come and, get to know someone who's just like them and working past everything they've been through, um, and wanting more for themselves. We're all about growth here. And yeah, comment growth in the chat. And yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot. Some of the stuff I'm talking about, it is very deep. It is probably for some people the first time they've heard some of these stories, and I haven't even really got to some of the worst bits. But for today's video, I am moving away from the storytelling just for, this occasion. And that is because I have wanted the channel to be a platform where I could talk about every and anything. And I did promise to use my platform for not just myself, but for issues that affect everybody. So, for that reason, today I'm going to be talking a bit about mental health. I'm going to talk a bit about my understanding of some conditions, in particular PTSD and depression. Um, yeah, so I have no disclaimers for this video. I think you already be familiar with my usual disclaimers. And please, 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 if you are going through anything right now where you need immediate help, please find the nearest organization that can do that for you and can support you, or even get in contact with me and I can help put you in touch with the right people. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy the video. So, PTSD, depression, what are they? A lot of us have heard of them before. I think some people are less familiar with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And some people have heard of depression, but have probably never interacted with a person with depression, or have experienced it firsthand, but haven't experienced the extremes of depression, because I think everybody has moments where they're high and low. And at low points, I think a lot of people feel like, yeah, this feels like rock bottom, or this feels like the worst I've ever felt like, or this feels like I want to give up on certain things, give up on my dreams, I've lost hope. And some of those feelings are depression. Um, just actually, I will put a disclaimer in here. I'm not a medical health professional. I do have a level 2 in counseling skills, which doesn't qualify me to diagnose anybody, doesn't qualify me to tell you what you're feeling is this or isn't this. This is just me opening a conversation, sharing what I know, in hopes that somebody might find out something new about themselves or someone else. And yeah, and the reason I say that is because some of the people I grew up around and some of the things that I witnessed, I didn't realize they were people who are literally going through depression, and their behavior was like that because they were not well. They were doing bad things, entertaining terrible, terrible people in their lives, and having situations that you could only describe as low self-esteem. And I literally thought, a lot of the times, like, why are you doing this? Why are you not changing yourself? Why are you not bettering yourself? And that's a immature mentality. And getting older and wiser, I've learned, a lot of the time people act out when they're not feeling so great. So yeah, I want to talk about it. And first of all, I want to distinguish between PTSD and depression, because it's for a very important reason, which relates to me, which is that at points when I've not felt very happy and I felt low and I felt upset, it's because of depressive thoughts or depressive feelings, and sometimes it is PTSD. Um, and I've had a diagnosis for PTSD. And when I was very young, I was diagnosed with depression. Um, and I fought and fought for my PTSD diagnosis, because at the time when I was diagnosed as depressed, the doctors were not acknowledging the abuse that I'd been through. So I literally had to fight and say to them, look, I'm not a person who experiences depression. It's like literally times when I have flashbacks, or I have moments where I'm frozen, and I'm just reliving and re-experiencing things that I've been through. I'm so sorry. This is like probably the most I've ever shared on here, but I feel like I'm qualified to talk about it, and I feel like I should, because I think a lot of people stray away from talking about their real feelings, and I'm not scared of how I felt in the past, and I'm not scared to share with you techniques that have helped me to really, really push and move on from it. Um, so I'll tell you the difference as far as what I know, and then I will tell you what Google says. So, I think depression is a condition that is both are treatable, but depression is something you can't help. So you might have gone through something that is the same as somebody else, but your reaction to it and your feelings towards that experience are not the same, and you're not able to cope, or you're not able to process what you've been through in the same way, because you literally are wired to have a depressive thought pattern. So that might manifest itself in like crying a lot, or not wanting to go outside and hang out with your friends, or not wanting to go and look for a job, or, you know, it might also manifest itself in really low mood swings, um, having like addictive tendencies, trying substances, drugs, and alcohol in order to mask feelings, mask pain. So I want to make that clear that, sometimes when you have PTSD, um, I think some people can try to um, heal themselves, or they would try to self medicate with drugs and alcohol. I think that's something you can do across a wide range of sicknesses and illnesses. Um, but to make it clear that PTSD is, I think it's fair to say that it would not exist within you if you hadn't experienced a certain something, if something hadn't happened to you, if you hadn't witnessed something, if you hadn't seen something which was completely out of the ordinary. Um, and that's how I came to know, the difference, because I spent a lot of my childhood um having problems dealing with what happened to me, but I often had to deal with it myself, as I've described. I had a lot of very strange people around me who were really not for me, and when I would be upset and I would want someone to talk to, I really didn't have anyone to reach out to. So I had to learn methods to kind of like be okay and to get on with things. And, in a way, I guess everything works out for the best. So that's the way that PTSD manifested itself in me. I always knew early on that I was experiencing PTSD, because it would be literally me remembering things that were so horrific, that I'd not shared with people. And that's another reason I came on here and spoke about some of those things that I'd never been through, never had a conversation with anybody about directly before, or a trusted person, because I wanted to make it clear that if it wasn't for those scenarios, I wouldn't have had the reactions that I had at the time. So I did find some information on Google, which I think really, really illustrates it clearly, what the differences are. So it says here, and there's quite a few sources which I will add into the description. But it says specifically PTSD is specifically triggered by a traumatic event, while depression can stem from various factors like loss, stress, or medical conditions. So it's very, very, there is a fine line there, but there is that grey area of the traumatic event. Loss can be a traumatic event, but it's also a very common um thing. And there is a sense that depression lives within you, but it doesn't come out unless you're in particular situations. But for me, I think the people I've witnessed going through depression, sometimes they're not triggered by anything in particular. It's just that season. It's just that time when, you know what, I've been happy for too long. My mind is telling me to process things that I've been ignoring. I'm thinking back about times when I have not felt confident. I've looked in the mirror and been unhappy. When somebody said something nasty to me that I didn't find funny and I found abusive, and I'm now mulling over it, and I can't get myself out of that headspace. And I have witnessed this. I've sat down with friends and been talking them through things and telling them, you're so beautiful, you shouldn't be upset. Your skin color is beautiful, your hair is beautiful. You shouldn't feel low about who you are. And those are people I know who've specifically been diagnosed with depression. Um and I could see the difference, because it would often not be the person saying, when this happened to me, this particular thing, it was so bad that I just feel so nervous and so anxious when I think about it. And I think Google does go on to talk about the fact that PTSD often is coupled with um, anxiety. So that's one of my main symptoms. It's just I mean, I think most mums would agree, like, worrying is a natural thing when you have children, but I think I would tend to be so much more worried. Like, okay, I don't want the same things to happen to her that happened to me, so I might be very, very protective over her, or, very, very worried about her going out when it might just be absolutely, she's going to be absolutely fine, and there's other people there to look after her. And I'm still thinking, you know what, I don't want you to go on the street and people start approaching you, or you know that might be difficult to understand, because you don't know me as a parent. And I think I should do a video on me as a parent. But I do love my daughter to pieces. I think anyone who knows me will know that. um but the events that I experienced, which were traumatic, are directly linked to abuse, child abuse, and also, as I said, PDF files, and walking on the street and having people come up to me and say weird stuff to me. Uh, so those minor experiences have amounted to, that shocking feeling in my body where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to me. I can't believe I can't get that out of my head and throw it in the bin. With like loss, I'll go back to the loss example. We tend to move on from loss after a while, because I can say that because, after my dad passed, I felt those same feelings. You've lost someone you love, you won't get to see them again. That time you was gonna go over there and say something to them or go and see how they were, you don't get to do that. The times you think back to the good times you've had, that can make you feel low. That can make you feel like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't get to see them again. And you might want to cry, and you might feel a heartache, and you might get butterflies. And that my experience of loss didn't manifest itself into depression. It was just a genuine feeling of loss. But I can see how a person could take that and really, really end up really having, more than just the blues, which is what WebMD from Google says. It says post traumatic stress disorder and depression go deeper than just having the blues, you know. So yeah, I would say with my experience of PTSD, it wouldn't often lead to the blues. What it would lead to is just moments in time that I physically can't get myself out of. I used to have really bad seizures when the memories would come on. And then I got a lot better growing up at calculating when it was going to happen, because it would either be like a triggering event. It could be something somebody said a few weeks prior who didn't realize what I'd been through. And they may have said something, and I may have thought, no, that's okay. I can take that you said that. I can, and I dealt with it for a week or two, and then I sat down one day and just thought, okay, I could feel that feeling coming on. The breathing is getting heavy, and I'm about to have a seizure. And when I started having seizures as a child, again, I didn't reach out to anyone. I would be alone, um, which is it's difficult to say that, but it's something I've moved on from now. I get a lot of support with that sort of thing. But yes, I just want to, make that clear to people that they should be looking out for those signs in people. The way how I would like to use that information as a source for the community around me is because I personally think those two things, PTSD and depression, are what affect a lot of people that we meet on a daily basis, especially in our communities. When I say our communities, I think a lot of people will understand what I might mean. Maybe socioeconomic, poverty driven, maybe where we didn't have the best standard of parenting, and maybe we were living on the breadline, some of us. And some of us didn't experience poverty. Some of our parents had income, but just were not present, or were very violent, or were very um, terrible communicators. And that did result in some feelings that we were incomplete growing up. We wish that we had a better development, mental, social, economic development. And some of those skills that we didn't develop at home or at school, uh, result in us not being able to cope with certain situations. And when you're not taught how to cope with your trauma, you're not taught how to cope with your low moods, it can develop into depression. It can develop into PTSD. And that's what happened to me. When I was going through certain abuses, it was okay. Okay, I've just been hit. I'm crying. I'm very upset, but I still can get up the next day and play, run up and down, eat sweets, watch TV, and I would never be in floods of tears. It wasn't until I got older and puberty kicked in and I had to start paying my own bills. Maybe you know that's when the load, it starts to build up, the layers. And that's what my therapist had said to me before. She said those layers build up, and that is creating that pressure. And the therapist said to me her job and her thing that she likes to teach is to peel back each of those layers and deal with things one at a time. But I'm not saying that we should justify some of the behaviors that exist in our communities, but I think a better approach to deciding how to manage things is to actually look at a person and an individual on that type of basis, and sort of say to yourself, I think that person probably suffers with some form of condition, uh which it might fall outside of the typical neurodivergent type Gen Z acceptable diagnosis. It could be something deeper. It could be those schizophrenias. It could be those manic depressions. And some of these things, I'm no expert. I cannot say that just genuine talking therapies can heal someone from some of those really deep dark places. But before things were so bad with those people, before those experiences built up on top of each other, were they given the correct support each and every time? Were they understood? You know, I can say for myself, at the lowest point of my experiences with PTSD, I was not supported at all, at all. And that wasn't just because the people around me were not very good at communicating or helping others. It was because I didn't know how to communicate myself. I didn't know how to tell somebody, okay, when I went through this, it made me feel like this. Sometimes even just not having a wide vocabulary and not having read and understood enough about what is going on in your head can be the problem. And that is also another major issue in our society, not just the community that I'm from, but in our society in general. And I have recently been advocating for social media to become that type of space, which you know it's not a place where you come on here to mock and judge people who are living with addictions and at the low points of their life. You're literally understanding that when somebody needs help, you need to be able to identify that and to be able to play your role in helping that person to heal, without the judgment. Because judgment is also a major reason why people don't reach out for help in the first place. And it's not just the judgment of health professionals; it's literally your friends, your family members, people who say things without thinking what they're saying. We do need to get better at sitting down and working at what you're saying to somebody and the impact you're having, and actually wanting to have a positive impact on people with your words. So, yeah, I mean, I did have a bit of a longer explanation on the two illnesses that I wanted to share. Um, so what I will do is just have a look back quickly and see whether I wanna. Yes, yes, I do remember. So this is the AI overview, um, but it's quite a helpful one. And I just wanted to say that post traumatic stress disorder is said to be triggered by experiencing a traumatic event, a serious accident, a physical sexual assault, or even something at work. And the symptoms include intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, nightmares, or distressing memories of the trauma, avoidance of places or situations that remind that person of the trauma, negative changes in thinking and in mood, ongoing fear, horror, anger, guilt, shame, memory problems, feeling detached from family and friends, and hypervigilance, being easily startled, having difficulty concentrating, or feeling constantly on edge. And that, I just want to say, that is such a bang on definition of the symptoms. And I know so many people who are literally going through this, yeah, as a daily lifestyle. It's like, yeah, I just always get paranoid, or I'm always just detached. I always don't like to think about what I've been through. Um, yeah, oh no, I don't go over there because, that this so and so, did this and that to me over there. And these are things that are so common that nobody would think, I need a diagnosis for that. I need to actually go and tell somebody that, listen, I have these symptoms and I went through this particular thing, and this this is what I feel I have. This is a problem that I'm facing. So then it does say the duration can be lasting for more than a month and cause significant distress to daily functioning. There are treatments as well, cognitive processing therapy, and I've had some of some of those treatments, which are just amazing. Sometimes just a professional person who you explain something to who's able to say, did you know that if you write something down on a piece of paper, and they literally have worksheets and things you can work from, which help you to just instantly change your thought patterns. It can be within months. You're just like, hold on, I've been dealing with this for 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 15 years. I've been locking this away. And I've sat down with somebody, and within a matter of minutes, they've said something to me that's just completely changed and rewired my brain. And that's why I wanted to make this video, to make it clear to you that instead of living in a horrible situation, in a nightmare, having been through something that you didn't deserve to go through, and maybe nobody's ever sympathized with you about it, you need to tell somebody. You need to get the therapy you're owed, and you need to, be able to apply those changes to your life. And moving on to depression, the triggers here, it says various factors, and I don't think it lists all of them, but it does say a stressful life events, medical conditions, or certain medication. So you can see that, well, this is just an AI overview. It's not, the doctor's handbook and a university degree in medical science. It literally is just a few words. But if you feel like you know anyone who, since you've started doing that, or since you've started a new job and you've been through that, you've been very persistently sad. You've had a lot of loss of interest in, or pleasure in the activities that we used to do. You used to enjoy going out, and now you don't want to do that anymore. You don't, you've got changes in appetite or sleep, or you're always up all night, or or you're not eating today, or fatigue, loss of energy, difficulty concentrating. And I think with the difficulty concentrating thing, I think a lot of people can empathize with that. Um, Even myself, as I said, I don't suffer with depression, but I can empathize with having lack of concentration. Sometimes I've got things to get on with, and I'm like, I've sat here for 5 minutes, and now I need to do something else. So I think it's fair to say. Oh, there's more. There's more. I'll just read the rest. And it says here, the symptoms must persist for at least 2 weeks to meet the diagnostic criteria. And you can have cognitive behavioral therapy, medication or a combination of both, or psychotherapy to treat depression. Um, and there's some more important stuff here: the overlap and co-occurrence of depression and PTSD, which is where you have both, is that they can often occur together, with one condition potentially exacerbating the other. Traumatic events can trigger or worsen depression, and conversely, depression can make individuals more vulnerable to developing PTSD. Some symptoms, such as difficulty sleeping or keeping your mind focused, can be shared between both conditions. Um, and it says here, if you have both PTSD and depression, you should usually be treated for the PTSD first. So yeah, that, as I said, is just a quick overview. I will put some more sources in the description that you can have a look at. Um, but please, it's not just about you as an individual saying, "Well, I don't have depression, I don't have PTSD, I don't care, I'm good." It's about the people you care about and the people you love who may have never told you something they're going through, or things that has been on their mind for a long time, for a month or 2 weeks, and if they're still suffering with it a year later and you've not said anything and you've noticed all of these things, then you are to blame for when they go outside and they act out and they affect other people's lives and they make other people's lives a misery, because instead of dealing with their problems, they're like, you know what, I'm going to mask with something else. And then at that point, it's so hard for them to be looked at as a victim, as somebody who needs help. So we do all need to kind of be actively and proactively searching for these signs and symptoms. And as I said, do your reading, do your research, know what you're looking out for, become qualified in some of these areas, so you can say to people, look, I know what I'm talking about. And you can get a diagnosis really quickly with your GP or at a hospital, or talking to a therapist, or talking to a teacher at school or at university, or somebody at work who's responsible for that sort of thing. Somebody who's a safeguarding lead, go to them, tell them that you need this help. And that's how we can avoid some of the situations, like the things I went through, because I'm going to guarantee that probably 90% of the people involved in some of those things I went through were probably suffering with mental conditions undiagnosed. And no, I don't feel sorry for them, because they should know right from wrong. But at the end of the day, how are we going to prevent things like this from happening again? Um, and we know full well that right now there are still active PDF files and traffickers and people doing all sorts of disgusting things who are still active in our communities. When you're approaching these people, and some of you are befriending these people, these are some of the conversations you can be having too. You don't have to indulge them. You can stop people in their tracks and remind them that mental health is important, and some of the reason they're doing the things they're doing is because they need to address their problems. And I just want to put that out there in this short video. I mean, I think we could go on about mental health for years and years and years, and there is an ongoing conversation on probably all platforms. But I just want to reignite that discussion and just say, I think it says that the facts state that it's one every 1 in 2 people has a mental health disorder. So you sitting with another person, one of you is likely to have a mental health issue. So this should be a constant discussion, a daily discussion. Um, and if you can't do it for yourself and you can't do it for the people around you, do it for me. I've been through enough. I don't want to see another person with mental health ruining their children's life, a child's life, their communities, because they need help. Please think about all of those who cannot speak for themselves, like me as a child, who wished that people were strong enough to go in my home and say, listen, you've got problems and you need to sort yourself out, and therefore you can be a better parent to these kids, you know. And that never happened in my household. It never did. It never became a topic, and it should have, because I probably wouldn't be here venting on um social media. Uh, but God bless social media nonetheless. Yeah, so that's gonna be it for today. It was a short one, and I will probably revisit this topic in the future. Please do share to somebody who needs to see this. Follow the channel. Support the channel with your comments and your subscriptions. And I will see you in the next one. Have a blessed night. Bye.